Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hello.
Welcome along to Webinar Wednesday for March from In Control Scotland. We are keeping it in the family this month, aren't we, guys? We are having just a wee team chat about on the title of looking back and looking forwards, because it's been an interesting year. It's been an interesting 10 or more years in the world of self-directed support.
Yes, I was just reflecting back and stuff that we've done like years ago and see the things that came up that I'd actually forgotten about. I thought, my God, we have been in some journey over the years.
Yeah, what were you thinking about, June?
I was just thinking about some of the stuff that we did. See the culture change, the change in organisations, for changing times, the Inclusion Institute, the big things we used to do. And so, a lot of memories, a lot of good things.
All still relevant as well, though. All still relevant. So in some ways that's good, and in some ways it's a bit depressing, isn't it? Because you think, whoa, we need to keep moving those things on, in the sense, So,
It's like the Forth Road Bridge, painting the Forth Rail Bridge or whatever it is. It's never quite finished.
It's a bit of a treadmill. But we keep going.
Yeah, I've actually been the last couple of I haven't been on screen in the last couple of Webinar Wednesdays anyway, so it's interesting for me to be back on StreamYard for the first time for a while. So
you've just been in the background providing dad jokes.
Yeah, well, that's my that's probably what I'm best at, to be honest.
Well, I suppose before we kick off with our reflections, like what have we got to update? What have we been up to since the last time we were on screen? We've been ploughing on with nearly finished our current cohort of Working Together for Change, haven't we? Keith, you want to say anything about that? How's that been?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we've got like one more session to go. It's always interesting, and it's interesting again this year. And each year is a little bit different in terms of the dynamics of people and what people's focus is. Although obviously there are lots of common themes. But yeah. And our last session is due to be in about 2 weeks from now, and actually 2 weeks yesterday. And that's an in-person session that we're holding for people to pull some of the threads together, see what's still outstanding, and then hopefully people will have something that it can take away with them to help them in their own either their own personal journeys to better support, or how they're going to influence better support themselves, or how they're going to be involved in providing information, advice, and support. So a whole range of different people who come, and a whole range of different things that we talk about. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe what it makes me think, and I don't want to leap too far forward, but maybe what it makes me think is just the importance of making connections. And I think that's one of the things that would be a common theme in some of the things that you mentioned there, June, wouldn't it? It'd just be that value of making connections, and sometimes you make connections with people.
And I think that with the Working Together for Change works really well, because you are bringing a whole diverse range of people into the room together to work together, and that's hence the title, Working Together for Change. So it does work really well. And each year participants comes with a different agenda of what they're looking to get out of the programme, which is also good as well. And it's always good to find out after that final session, how far people have come and what they have actually got out of the programme. It's always good for us. And of course, as always, we take that feedback and that feeds into our learning when we move forward and organise our next programme. So all good.
Sometimes, sorry, a little philosophy here. Sometimes you never know how today will influence tomorrow, do you? Either as well. Sometimes you do something, and like a while after, somebody says that was really important to me, and it's not been the thing that you thought would be important to people, and it's spun off into something else, and other things have happened as a consequence of it, and that's always really. In a session like this, when we're talking about looking back and looking forward, I think that's always interesting to think about. That sometimes you don't really know what's going to happen as a result of what you do, and there are the outcomes that you hope for, and then there are the unintended consequences, and hopefully they're good unintended consequences.
We've seen that with programmes throughout the years. Like people will come with one thing that they want to get out of it, and halfway through they've totally changed what it is that's important now. to them. So
yeah.
And
no, I was just going to say, it just that also just reminds me of the things that we do that enable people to have different experiences as well. So just that stuff that where people would because they're doing something different, you're out there making other connections, and that leads on to other things, doesn't it? It leads on to a different different set of things that you can think about and do. Right, sorry, Pauline. Don't let me drift off into too many of those sorts of reflections.
Into philosophy, no, that's grand. No, I was going to say, like, speaking of diverse bunches of folk getting together, we had the first time we tried a wee half-day open online learning session called Getting to Grips with SDS. And I wasn't in that room, but you guys were. June, how did that go on? What did you think?
Yeah, no, it went really well. People were really engaging. We got asked loads of questions. So we felt, there was definitely a need for us to do something like that. Obviously, when we first advertised that we were going to be running that programme, we were inundated with requests for places, and we could only offer up to 30 places. Because it's online, we try to keep it, because we want to do the best training session that we can. So we are going to now be running an additional 2 sessions. It'll be the same training session, but we're aiming, the first one is going to be taking place on Tuesday, the 25th of April. And we're gearing that towards unpaid carers and people in receipt of support. And then we're going to be running it again on the 16th of May, which is a Tuesday as well. And that'll be open to health and social care partnerships, provider organisations, people in receipt of support, and unpaid carers. So we have put up some posts with some information on our Facebook page, and we will circulate that to our contacts list. So no, it was a really good session, Keith. Well, I felt it went really well.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things I thought about it again was there's so much you could put into a session like that actually sometimes you just need to step back and think, okay, well, we're doing 3 hours, so let's make the most of the 3 hours rather than trying to squeeze everything in. So I think that's a little reflection from me for the next time, just trying to, because there are so many, and obviously you want to make sure that there is enough space for people to ask the questions that are really particular to them, whilst not going down an alley that, not when you've got 30 people, you need to also make sure that it's still relevant to and interesting to all 30. So yeah,
that was one of the interesting things that I thought, a wee reflection for me from recent training that I've done, is that sometimes people go along to a training session with a question in their mind they really want you to answer. And if you don't ask them, do you have any questions you really want to answer, then they might leave thinking, oh God, that was a waste of my time. So it's really important that we're asking folk, actually, what are the sticky questions you've got, the sticky issues that you really need to understand, and tell us, and we'll try and help explain and work through it. So those we Getting to Grip half-day sessions are open to anybody. Like June said, there's information about them on our website, I imagine. I'm going
to put it up on the website today, and I'll also circulate it out to our contacts list. But it is on our Facebook page for the moment. So
wonderful, excellent. We've also got a lunchtime session next week as well, or Tuesday. Put my teeth in. Our topic for Tuesday, that was hard to say, is we work over financial year period. So our work starts in April and finishes in March every year. So this last time of the year, we're kind of looking back at what we've done and looking forward, again, there's a theme, at what we want to do next year. So we'd really like to use the Tuesday lunchtime session space to collectively kind of reflect on what we should be focusing on, and how we can help people get the most out of SDS, and how we can support people to do that. So if you're a regular to our lunchtime sessions and you want to have a wee input in what they might look or feel like, please do come along and tell us, because I feel like every time we do a lunchtime session or a webinar, somebody makes a comment or asks a question that I think, oh aye, that's interesting, we should explore that a wee bit more, shouldn't we? So please do come along, and that's Tuesday at 12 to 1 o'clock on Microsoft Teams. Give us an email if you want to come along. Please get involved. That was my pitch.
Yeah, terrific Tuesday topic. That is.
Yes, easy for you to say, not for me.
And thinking of teas, Thursday we have also got our lunchtime session scheduled at the end of the month, as we always would do, for people interested in self-directed sport and children, young people, and families, and that's on the second last day of the month this month, so it's on the 30th of March. And again, as regular people who've come along will know, we've been working through the publication that Nick Crosby was principally engaged in putting together about a new relationship. So this would be the last session that sort of tries to draw together some of the things that have been discussed there, and also still continues to look at that idea of a 7-step process to getting the support that's right for you. So that's on Tuesday, the 30th of March at 12 o'clock, as well as and that's on Microsoft Teams too.
There is some information about the things that Paul and Inky's just been speaking about in our newsletter, and it will be going out to all our contacts, our mailing list over the next couple of days, with a few interesting items as well.
Full of interesting items. That's the thing. There's so much going on just now. It's so interesting, and we if you had a penny for every time somebody said we're in unprecedented times, you'd be rolling in pennies, put it that way. And it feels like there's so much going on, and some of it's really big policy stuff. Some of it's individual people doing interesting pieces of work or using their budgets really creatively, and some of it's just really big policy stuff, like the National Care Service, the announcement that that's being delayed until there's a new First Minister. So it's a really important time, I think, for us as a community of people who are working to try and get the best out of social care and make it as fair as possible. For us to kind of come together and make sure that we're collectively supporting each other and looking at ways that we can work collaboratively to deliver on that. Because it does make you worried a wee bit sometimes when the big policy stuff gets delayed. The thinking, what does this mean? Because there's need for reform now. I was at an event last week. Was it last week? I think it was last week, where lots of people were talking about this and saying we can't really wait for the National Care Service to come along and fix all our problems. There's stuff needing done today. So it's really important that while the big policy stuff might be a shifting landscape, there's work needing done today, and we're all an important part of that. So please come along and be part of that wild ride with Think and Show Scotland if you want. Our doors are open.
And if people want to contact us either to talk about any of that directly, or if you're not on the mailing list for the newsletter yet, you can just contact that email address, which is now scrolling across the bottom there, the info at email address. I think that's really important, isn't it? Like that idea that we can't wait for the next big thing to come along. That now is a good time. Now is always a good time to do something. So just for anyone and me as well, really, what does that mean, really, Pauline? That delay is it just a delay until the new First Minister, do you think, comes into post?
So I don't know. There's been a lot of. I mean, this was the same as when SDS was getting developed. There were lots of people who were really firm believers in it, and there were lots of people who were critics and had worries and legitimate concerns. And I think the same can be said times 100 for the National Care Service. There are lots of folk who really, really support this as a way forward, and there are other folk who say that they're worried about what it might mean on an individual level, on an organisational level, on a whatever, big macro, micro levels, all the rest of it. And I think for me that it comes back to that idea that the National Care Service, when and if it gets started and put in place, should make things fairer and more, reduce that idea of the postcode lottery. And I know a lot of people do feel like the phrase postcode lottery gets thrown about a lot without any real meaning behind it. But the three of us in this room know what that really means for people. We speak to people using services and folk working and providers and local authorities every day who tell us, I wish it was like it is up the road because that would make our life easier and blah, blah, blah. So there's a need for that to happen as far as I'm concerned. But there's also stuff we could be doing today to reduce that. Like you said, the best time to do stuff is now. I'm still hopeful that it's a delay and not not an abandonment. I think we've come really far in proposing this approach, and it's worth exploring in as much detail as we possibly can before any decisions are made. But yeah, people are right to comment and criticise. That's the point of that. You don't if we all just evolved in a wee bubble and came out with our own ideas, it wouldn't work. So it's good that things are being challenged and being criticised as much as they can. That was
and the earliest time that would come into force would be 26, wouldn't it? 2026. That's still So I mean, that feels. I mean, that will be here very soon, I'm sure, but it also feels like a long way away in some ways. I mean, we'll all be driving electric. We won't be driving. In fact, we'll all be in driverless electric vehicles a few years after that. So, and in fact, there'll be we won't be doing Webinar Wednesday. There'll be some artificial intelligence who's doing who's
straight into your brain. Dad jokes. Dad jokes direct to your frontal cortex.
Exactly.
This is how creative In Control Scotland can be, thinking of the future and what it will look like.
Well, technology is a big part of the future, isn't it? I mean, if we look at how technology, I mean, the other thing I'm thinking there is, if we look at how the technology that people access that's part of their support and their support structures now, we probably wouldn't have believed that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever, would we? And sometimes strange things happen which kick on things, don't they? Like, obviously, we wouldn't be here talking on StreamYard now without the pandemic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah,
and that was one of the reflections I was thinking back on when I was looking at some of the stuff we were doing when COVID happened. How we were able to adapt. And move forward and still keep people included, involved in everything and what we were doing. And a lot of the feedback from that, even from some of the people that we work with and work for, has been really positive. We've been able to include further afield and bring. So it was good.
Yeah. And it also makes you think about some of the things that you think, well, actually, that probably wasn't as effective as it could have been, because I'm not trying to say anything other than sometimes when you look back at things, you think, wow, we did all that traveling and we did that and we did that. And some of that was absolutely necessary, and some of it probably wasn't when you look back at it now.
I mean, there are still times when we love meeting people in person, because we like to. It's nothing like that feeling, knowing you're meeting people and interacting with people face to face. But there's still good positive opportunities about doing that kind of hybrid. So having online and in person works really well.
Definitely. I think it's definitely made. Like our work, we are a tiny little team with a big wide remit across 32 local authorities and millions of people that are using that social care touches the lives of. It touches everybody's lives, and it's definitely made it much easier for us to meaningfully engage with a wider range of people. That's the big reflection for me moving into more digital work, is like you can have. And it's also like that opportunity for collaboration. We've had that as a reflection from loads of our programmes, which be people from all over the country, from all different walks of life, coming together in a room, either real or virtual, to kind of share their experiences. And that's just wasn't as possible back before, when folk from Shetlands could be chatting to folk in the Scottish borders and everybody in between. So that's been valuable.
Yeah. Or if they did, they made a massive effort, and you would think, whoa, is that? Yeah. Got a couple of comments that have come in here that maybe show on screen from Jim. So
that was quick.
There we are. That was quick, yeah. So Jim's saying working together for change has never been more important, since a lot of the personnel in quite a few organisations have changed and recruitment has become harder. So. Yeah, this is an interesting thing, isn't it? Just about that churn that happens, and obviously COVID and pandemic has definitely exacerbated that as well. And then we have talked before about the whole recruitment crisis in social care, and actually not just in social care, but obviously our specific interest is in social care, but recruitment crisis in so many different places. And then Jim also says, a good topic for the future would be to look at how social care practitioners are not being paid or given the same recognition as our NHS colleagues. So a couple of things there.
So that's a really interesting comment from Jim. That's well, both of them are really interesting. But I'll start with the second one first. But I was reading a report recently that said that newly qualified nurses earn 20% more than social care workers, and there's that like conversation about why do we find it so hard to recruit and retain staff when we're paying folk the national living wage, which has been somebody has decided is really the bare minimum people need to live a good life. Like there's something so core in that messaging that needs to get looked at. You know, like these are people that are. I mean, we've all worked in service providers. We've all delivered services in our routine, and we know what it's like how hard a job it can be, and actually feeling like you're being rewarded with the bare minimum isn't particularly nice. So there is a really important case to be made for that to be looked at, to be able to value the amazing workforce that we've got and make sure that they're able to develop and learn within their roles. And I always said this, something like a bugbear of mine was if you wanted to progress in social care, you have to become a manager, and then you're doing less support work. Amazing support workers aren't necessarily amazing managers, but there's nowhere else for folk to learn and grow. So there's a whole bit of thinking that needs to happen about how you can reward and retain staff.
Do you feel hopeful about that, Pauline?
I think I do. It's very much on the agenda, which is interesting. If we're talking about a national care service and it being aligned to the National Health Service, then I don't think anybody would stand for that level of disparity between the two sets of organisations, and I don't think it's. I think that's right. I'm hopeful that it'll be addressed. I mean, it's this thing goes back to Feely. Social care should be a springboard, not a safety net. It has to be a springboard for the staff members as well. Do you know, people have to feel like it's part of something greater than what it is just now. So I'm hopeful.
I think there's been a lot of conversations going on around that in particular as well. So hopefully with the conversations that will move things forward. And it has been highlighted in different reports, like the Feely report. And
What do you think of that, June? Because obviously you've been involved in quite a lot of recruitment in the past as well. Because I was thinking, as we say that, I was thinking two things. One is that that it is a long-standing issue. It's not a new thing, but maybe there's a particular crisis at the moment. But but that whole valuing of the social care workforce is a massive thing that's been around, valuing financially and obviously in other ways as well. But we've acknowledged the financial bit there. A lot of people that come into these roles within social care and that do it because they're passionate about the work that they do. But there's also that sense of, people need to be able to live and pay their bills. People need to feel valued in the roles that they're doing. So you've got to take all that into consideration as well. And I think sometimes, I keep hearing people commenting, people that I know that have worked in social care most of their lives, and I know it comes up again, and it's that old saying, I'll get more if I go and work in Morrison's or whatever. But you're hearing it more and more and more. And I'm thinking, it's a shame because people are really passionate about the work that they're doing, but they're feeling so undervalued in it at the moment. So I think it needs to be addressed. And I have heard it coming up more and more. I know we've certainly had conversations around it, even where organisations are having to, because they can't recruit and they're having to bring in like agency staff. And then it's that, staff that are already there working hard and not really feeling valued, and then seeing the agency staff are being paid and the roles that they're fulfilling, and it's hard. And I think it's something that definitely needs to be addressed going forward. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, Jim's put another comment in about CCPS work CCPS have done on social care pay. Just in another context, there was something on the radio about a coffee chain, and they were talking about how they'd raised their salaries for staff 3 times within the last year, obviously reflecting the particular year that we've been in, So it's just. So it's not new, but it's a continuing and very particular challenge as well at the moment.
Yeah. The other thing that makes me reflect on is the other massive bit of our workforce that go pretty under-recognised as well, which is unpaid carers. And there's something really important for me about, like, we do loads of work with unpaid carers, like loads and loads. They're involved in everything. I remember speaking to a group of carers. It was kind of summertime last year, I think it was. And it was about the time when there was starting to be plans for industrial action in some of the big public sector. So the trains, the Royal Mail, schools, and all the rest. There was kind of rumblings about this, and unpaid carers were saying, "But we'll never strike," and people know we'll never strike, so we'll never be able to get a better outcome for unpaid carers. So we have to use other ways of kind of advocating for change, because people know we will never go on strike because it's our loved ones. So. There's something like when we're talking about the wider workforce and making things better, we need to think about unpaid carers in this as well, because all of our bills have gone up. Unpaid carers' bills have gone up. They can sometimes have much bigger household bills because they've got folk who need to be warm or have higher electric bills because of their equipment that they're using. So we need to make sure that their voices are really heard front and centre, and when we're talking about improving social care too, making it all fairer. So they'll never go on strike, but they might unionise. I've heard two different sets of conversations about groups of carers coming together to form essentially trade unions for carers, which is a really interesting idea that I know some folk are exploring. Like, how can that collective power and voice be stronger sometimes than feeling like you're on your own.
And I think more so over the years, you're hearing, I think unpaid carers are beginning to have a voice now. You're hearing more and more stuff going on. And I know some of the work that we've done, like you were saying, Pauline, you've done some work, and a lot of the contact that I get, particularly through In Control Scotland, is from a lot of unpaid carers just looking for a wee bit of support and advice around things. And then obviously carers can put themselves forward for an SDS assessment as well now. So things are moving forward, but a bit slow in that area, I think. But
yeah, but I suppose the thing that I'm thinking, because I'm thinking about that very simple, probably oversimplistic phrase. There's lots happened, but there's still so much to do, or something like that, because there is, but there always, in some ways, there always will be, won't there? Because you're never going to get to an end point in thinking about how people get the right support, because the world changes, people change, technology changes, as we've acknowledged. So we're never gonna get to an end, but hopefully we're going to get to a position where more people have more of the support that works really well for them, which is essentially what In Control Scotland is trying to get to, isn't it? When I was thinking about this session, one of the things I was thinking was, if we look back, it's not really about trying to learn new things. It's not really about trying to learn new things. I think we probably know enough about self-directed, about support, about complex cultural change, about lots of the factors that would need to be addressed or to be looked at or to be considered in order for those things to. I don't think it's about learning new things about self-directed support, or more broadly about, as I said, the complex cultural change. It is about really taking them on board and moving forward with them. I don't know what you two think of that.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Sometimes I think it's not about learning new things, it's about learning how to do things differently as well. I know, like, some of the stuff that we've did, I mean, I certainly, through the years I've been working in Control Scotland, I learn something new every day nearly, but then some of the stuff that we have, if you look way back at the beginning and stuff that we're doing, seems quite similar to what we're doing then, but we're doing it differently, or we're doing it in a way that works better for people. So yeah.
Yeah, the thing that makes me think of is that we pyramids that our pal Heather Simmons developed
triangle.
about, like, the triangle of, and anybody who's been along to any In Control session will probably have seen this before, because we do use it a lot. But it's that idea, like, the important bits of SDS are at the bottom there, like the values and principles, and the fact that this is a model, a way of working, and a way that supports people to have a good life. And at the very, very top of that triangle, the tiniest little portion, is the systems and the processes and the things and the stuff and the bits. But we get our attention focused the wrong way around. We focus on the paperwork, or the process, or the form, or the model, or the whatever. And that's like almost it's totally necessary, but it shouldn't be your first point of consideration. And I think when it comes to that idea about, like, we probably know enough, I think we probably do know enough, but what we need to do is stop concentrating on the wrong stuff sometimes, and stop overcomplicating stuff. God, we've got a habit of the world and of social care. We overcomplicate stuff, and it shouldn't be that difficult. It shouldn't be that difficult. I'm not saying it's not that difficult, because it is now, but it shouldn't be. And it comes back to that, like, idea that I was speaking to a local authority who had, and I've now forgotten the number, but it was over 30 steps from somebody saying that they needed support to having an option 2 service in place, and it be up and running. Over 30 steps, individual points at which things can go wrong, at which mistakes can be made, or people can change their minds, or things shift, and you think, why have we let things get so complicated and so far away from the true spirit and purpose of SDS, which is people having a good life? So that's one of my biggest reflections, I suppose, when you mentioned that, Keith. It's like, let's fight.
Always ask those 2 questions, what's important for you, what's important to you, and then it's working forward for that. I don't think, like you say, Pauline, it's like we hear over and over again the process that people need to go through, and it's like all those steps just to get. And sometimes it's just something simple they're looking for. It's not like a big massive, but yet they still need to go through that same process.
What about the whole cultural change stuff then? What do you want to say about that? Because obviously that's, I mean, that the whole, I mean, obviously when self-directed support was first put into legislation and into formal policy documents, and the talk was of transformational change, wasn't it? It was change that would have that transformational effect on people in how people were able to organize, plan, and access support that really made that big difference to them in their lives. And that's always been the thing, hasn't it? That's really worked well for lots of people, and for lots of people maybe in one place or in one way, but for other people it hasn't. And again, probably I'm going back a bit to that postcode lottery comment that you made earlier on, but we haven't seen that transformational change yet. And it requires that whole cultural shift that has lots of different elements in it. And I sometimes think that not enough people still believe that it's possible. I don't know what you think. So I've thrown a few things in there, but I do sometimes think there's not enough people still who really believe, who get stuck in something, maybe in some of those 30 steps, or get stuck in a different aspect of a system that currently isn't working in that way, and can't actually see beyond that, to really believe that people are experts in their own lives, and that they should.
I think there's still a bit of work to be done around cultural change, and I know that we've had that conversation, and it does go back to that postcode lottery. You see where in some areas, I mean, we've spoken to people where it works really well, or they're not having to go through the 30 steps. It's just getting asked those questions, going through that bit of a process, but not to the extent of where it takes forever to get it. And then in other areas, it's just like nothing's really changed. They speak about self-directed support, but it's not really the person that's in control or getting to make any of the choices. So there is still quite a bit of work to go through that.
Yeah, I think there's like, how do I put this into words? I've got lots of thoughts. I'll try and get them out in some kind of order that makes sense. But like, there's something for me about the where it becomes difficult to believe in a better future is because people are so, it's like mindfulness, right? You can't think about, if you're spending all your time thinking about the future or the past, you can't concentrate on what you're doing just now. And I think we're seeing, like, at the moment, everybody is so stuck in the current situation, they can't think back or forward. It's almost like whatever the opposite of mindfulness is. That at the moment there are so many factors about. And I know local authorities are under so much pressure at the moment because they're struggling with recruitment and retention. We've got providers really struggling for recruitment and retention. We've got people using services feeling like their lives are getting made smaller because budgets are getting cut and because all these 30 steps processes are getting put in place to prohibit their ability to be flexible. And what that means is people say, why would I bother? It's easier just to say we'll revert to having option 3. You can get the council's in-house service and it'll be arranged tomorrow. And this is where, like, we're hopefully going to do some really interesting work next year to try and unpick some of this. This is one of the things that somebody said something to me the other day that kind of made me go, oh, that's interesting. Because he said, why are we focusing so much work on opening out option 2 or option 1 and not instead flipping it and thinking, why are we so stuck on option 3? Why is everybody going for this? Why are we just commissioning in-house services? Why are we not thinking creatively and flexibly and, like, differently about this? And the reason is because it's hard. It's really hard to get out of the habits of, like, we've made it quite easy for people to just say, right, okay, you need support. Here you go. Here's the in-house home care service. Here's whatever easy to arrange thing is. Instead of thinking, well, how do we make that as easy for the other options? It's not about making it harder for people to get support. It's about making it all equitably as easy. And that's really difficult because local authorities are short-staffed, providers are under the cosh, people using services have got smaller budgets. So I think there's that, like, it's a really tricky, I'm not going to say unprecedented time because then I'd owe myself a penny, but it's a really, really tricky time, and we're in a bit of a situation, I think, now, which is probably different to where we were 15 years ago when conversations about SDS first started. Because back then we were thinking, this is a great idea and a great new way of working. But where I think we are today is we really need to change the way that we're working because what we're doing just now simply isn't working. And that takes a wee bit of bravery and leadership to kind of admit to and own up to. I think the motivations for why SDS has to be, why people need to have more choice and control over their support and more flexibility in using their budgets are probably a bit different 15 years ago to what they are now. It feels a bit more like we really do bloody need to make this change because there aren't enough providers out there. There aren't enough hours of support available. There aren't this, there aren't that. So we need to take a mindset. Sorry, that was a very rambling rant, but I think you're right. I think there is a lot of, there are people who don't have the same belief that change is possible. But I think if we can shift that mindset to being like, actually, change is necessary because more of the same can't continue because you don't have access to the same resources and supports that we did 15 years ago. So let's use what we have and angle that positively towards making things better. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I will go off my high horse.
But you are also, of course, echoing the 21st Century Social Work Review when you say that, because the overarching theme of that was more of the same won't work. So that was whenever that was 20 years ago, because it was 20 years ago, wasn't it? Because it was part of looking to the 21st century. So. Okay, I think we probably, I mean, we're at 11:39 already, so we probably should just check out with each other. Are there things that we want to say about looking forward? Because we've mostly focused on the past, but also tried to reflect a bit forward there, haven't we? But is there anything else that we want to say if we think about specifically looking forward? Are there any other things that we think we haven't addressed? I suppose when I started thinking about this, and I was thinking about, well, what are going to be those key bits that do make the difference that we're looking for? What are going to be the key things that actually move us from the now to a future where things are better? Whether it addressing all the things that we've talked about and using the questions that you've said, June, about what's important to and what's important for. Yeah, what thoughts have you got on that? What's going to make the big difference? June, you said something about doing things better. Paul, you mentioned a whole range of things.
Yeah, just kind of planning ahead, I think, or just kind of looking into the future. Some of the stuff, I mean, again, it's like what we kind of take learning from what we've done in the past and kind of use that to improve what we do in the future. And just getting back to see our programs that we're in, like the Working Together for Change, where we're bringing everybody into that room. I mean, that seems to kind of really work well for people, because as I said, you've got a whole diversity of people in that room that can work together. So they're kind of seeing, like, from each other's point of views, know where that work happens and what's happening, what needs to change to make things better. So just continuing with that kind of stuff. Also, one of the banes for me, as I bring it up over and over again, is when we talk to people about self-directed support, and you get that question of what's the difference between that and social care. And we're like, well, actually, that is social care in Scotland, self-directed support. So there's a big thing for me about getting that message. So it is clear, that self-directed support is your social care in Scotland. It's not something that's different. And you think after all these years, it'd be something that'd be recognised. But I suppose going forward, that's something that needs to be quite clear. This is social care in Scotland. It's not different. It's nothing.
That's how everything should be organised and planned.
Yeah, and I think building on that, but also reflecting back to something you said at the start, Keith, about like you never know what you say that might, the outcome that you might have as a result is one wee thing that happens that is said. I'm thinking about the power of that collective collaboration. That we saw in the last year's Working Together for Change. We had somebody in a senior leadership role in a local authority use that as a springboard for working collaboratively to develop a strategic approach to SDS, which has then led on to loads of really interesting projects, loads of interesting stuff. And thinking about and I've had that reflected back at me from loads of folk and loads of different walks of life and organisations, that actually hearing other people's positions, because sometimes, and you're right, you said this at the beginning, Jen, sometimes people come in with their own things that they want to get out, their own agenda for a programme. And seeing that shift is so interesting, isn't it? We've seen that every time we've done one of these big projects, is people will come in with their position is clear, the social work bads or whatever it might be. Disabled people, now we know better than they do. Social workers know everything, and seeing things shift and move along the way for the better has been so strong. So there's the main thing that I think that needs to be foundational in all of our approaches, and I don't just mean in Control Scotland, I mean Scottish Government, I mean every organisation is doing that equal representation of voices and making sure that you've got the opportunity to enter into things with an open mind and an open heart and hear people truly, and not just hear them, but respond to what you hear and work together for change.
One of the things we always look forward to going forward is keeping those relationships and partnerships that we have got with other organisations now that are kind of thinking and kind of like-minded to ourselves. It's keeping that going.
Because none of us have all the answers. We've all got a bit of the answer, but when we put it all together,
so a big jigsaw, we all come together.
Big jigsaw, a big massive.
Yeah, some of the things that I'm hearing from what you're saying there are the importance of communication and keeping communication going and creating new channels for communication. The value of understanding things not only from where we are now, but from everybody's perspective. And I suppose there's a bit of the rights-based stuff in there as well, isn't there? Just about everybody being equal in their own contributions and in their own ways that they're approaching things. So, and what we should all have as equal human rights as well. So, we also, the other thing I did think as well was the thing about the momentum for change, that you obviously need a bit of momentum. If change is going to happen, you need some momentum. So you need some things that are going to give people that momentum. And sometimes it is about hearing the story of somebody else, and you can see that actually what a difference something's made.
I think even listening to people that we do a lot of as well just makes such a big difference to people and gets people motivated, when we do listen to what it is they need.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I was reflecting back then when you were saying that. Do you remember that brilliant change equation that was used at the last face-to-face working together for change? Now I'll get this wrong, but it was about change happens when the dissatisfaction to the current state of is greater to equal. I forget all the numbers, but it's taken into account that for change to happen, people need to be annoyed at the current position and willing to take some first steps to be able to make a change.
Yeah.
But all of those things have to be greater than the resistance to making change. So you need to make the resistance smaller and make the first steps super clear, and make sure you're working towards addressing that dissatisfaction to be able to make things better. So it's all maths and stats with just a strange but a really nice model to look at when you're thinking about how to make change.
Because that also helps you to think about, well, there are a number of ways to do this, aren't there? You can either increase the momentum or you can reduce the resistance as well. So and maybe you need to look at all those things at the same time, which is maybe a bit of the learning that we probably would say that we've got from over the years. So just it's 11:46. So just maybe a final comment from each of us. I think final comment about today's idea, which was just a discussion about looking forward and looking back. Shall I do mine first?
Yeah.
My final comment, and it's probably a comment that I would make in most, probably make it in most meetings in some way or another, is just that idea that everyone needs to stay hopeful and to find the things that allow them to stay hopeful. It might be those small steps that you mentioned, Pauline, or it might be thinking forward and imagining better, or it might be linking with someone who can support you along that road. So I suppose that's my final reflection, is the importance of working with hope, living with hope, and doing everything else with hope as well, because that's the way that we make things better.
Yes. I suppose mine would be about that, the power of connection and how important that is, and actually how I think if we as an organisation can create spaces for people to connect and share their experiences, then that's a big job done, and that's been some of the most powerful outcomes that I've seen over the last couple of years that I've been involved in Control Scotland, have been like where people have connected really meaningfully and listened and heard each other and thought, that's interesting, tell me more. So the power of connection and curiosity within that.
I suppose mine is the power of information, the information that we share constantly. It's like giving people, I hate using that word, I'm going to use it though because I say it all the time, it's like a weapon. It's like never give up. I think if you've got the right information and you're well informed, it just makes things so much easier for people. So it's for us to continue with that information and advice. It's power. It's having that wee bit of power if you've got information. There's lots of things I could say going forward, but we'd be here tomorrow at 11:45 if I started. So.
Okay. Well, we've got, as you said at the start point, we've got another chance for a conversation around the future on Tuesday next week, as part of the lunchtime session on Tuesday. What would it be? Tuesday the.
Yes.
Is it Tuesday the 4th? It's not Tuesday the 4th.
No, Tuesday the 14th.
Yeah. We'll share some information about that. There'll be stuff put on our website, and I think it was Pauline and Keith had mentioned earlier. If you contact us at the info at, we'll be able to share the link with you if you're interested in coming along. And just to say, our next webinar Wednesday would be in April. And I think we're going to do it in the second Wednesday again, aren't we, next month, Pauline? Yeah. Second Wednesday of the month, because the first Wednesday is leading up to the Easter holidays and viewers won't be around and things. So do it on the second Wednesday of Easter. Not of Easter, second Wednesday of April will be the next webinar Wednesday here on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you want to watch it. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks, guys. That was a really interesting chat. It was nice to take a space to look backwards and think about our hopes for the future. And thanks very much, everybody, for listening. As always, if you've got any questions, comments, anything you want to get involved with, just get in touch, please do. But otherwise, we'll hopefully see you at a lunchtime session or next time on a webinar in the not too distant future. So have a great Wednesday, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.